Yes, my friends, we are back. Another episode of the Tyler Hill podcast, and Bethny Ricks is with me. And let me tell you a awesome story that just happened 2 minutes ago. We're sitting here getting to know each other. Bethany is a friend of a friend. I've gotten introduced to her by Janiyah Alman, who will be on the podcast in a couple weeks. So, kindred spirits. I was told I needed to meet with this powerhouse of a leader. And we're sitting here, and she pulls up a Loyal Coffee mug, which is the coffee company I founded many moons ago with my best friends. And we didn't even know we were going to talk about coffee or nothing. And here she was
Oh
with
my
a coffee
gosh.
cup from my old coffee company. Bethany, welcome to the podcast. It's good to
What a
have
great
you.
way to start. This was awesome.
I
Yeah,
know.
this is great. I had no idea. This is wonderful.
I love it. Well, before we get into all the wisdom, and I mean your resume is long, there's a lot to talk about. We obviously are more than what we do and what we teach. Let me ask you, if you had a couple $100, you had a weekend to yourself, free schedule, what are you doing with a couple days all to yourself? What makes you come alive? What would you spend your time doing if you're not changing the world as you do?
Oh wow. I mean, the world is my oyster for 2 days.
Come on, let's hear it.
So other than going to Loyal Coffee,
Hmm.
which I'm not kidding, is one of my favorite that's just crazy. It's one of my favorite coffee places. So I'm in wow, what would I do? So I'm going to pack all the things in that I enjoy. People can get to know my personality. I'm an early riser, so it doesn't matter where I am in the world. I'm up at the crack of dawn. So I'm going to get up. I am going to have a cup of coffee. I'm going to drink coffee before water. I might not even drink water for a little while,
I
but
love it.
I have coffee before water. And then I'm either going to, well, no, you said it's my perfect day. So I would get up and I would get on my bike. So I would cycle outside. I have a road bike, which is in part why I'm dressed like this, because when we're done here, I'm going to go,
Love it.
go get on the bike. Uh, and then I would come back, get ready, have another cup of coffee,
Hmm.
and go to a great lunch spot with my husband and some friends, and then catch an art gallery
Hmm.
of some sort of local artists. Then I would go hiking. So we've really packed the day in. Go hike a mountain somewhere,
Love
uh,
it.
and then have a great dinner and put on some vinyl records and call it a day.
Okay, what are
I'm a huge vinyl collector. I love vinyl records.
yeah, let's go there while we're here. Tell me who are we listening to now? What's some of the more iconic vinyls you have? Let us into that just a minute.
Okay, so right now I am listening to. I've gotten back into the John Mayer.
Hmm. Yep. Oh yeah.
Right. So I like you're just drawn back at least once a year. So the crackle of that
Hmm.
on vinyl and all of them. So I have most of his records on vinyl. I think most of the classic ones I have are from the 90s R&B.
Great.
So I have all things Jill Scott, all things India Ari, all things Lauryn Hill,
Hmm.
um, D'Angelo,
Hmm.
all on vinyl. And so those are throughout the house. Some 70s and 80s, but I'm in that 90s genre probably because of my age. So
I
yeah.
love it. I love it. Where so you're outside, you're riding your bike. Where do we find you today where you get to engage in all these outdoor activities? Where do we find you today?
I would probably be because I've already been to the my two favorite states I've already been to this year.
Hmm.
So I would probably be in this case in Wyoming because I've already
Love it.
been to Utah and Colorado this year. So
That's
we got
awesome.
we got to hit Wyoming. Got to
I
show
love it.
Wyoming a little love.
It's awesome. Um, where would you consider like home? Like what's the place that formed Bethany? Where did you not just necessarily grow up, but where's the roots? Where's the places that really formed you into the human that you are?
Oh, that's such a great question. Virginia, which is not where I was born, but it is where my parents are from. It's where all my extent, like my cousins, my aunts, my uncles, we would spend summers there and holidays there. And so my love of basketball and football, all just, I'm a Virginia person at my core, even though I was born and raised in Ohio, unfortunately. I like the South, I like the heat.
Got
I
it.
cannot stand the cold and the snow. So that's kind of core to who I am, for sure.
I'm a little ignorant to I don't even know how to say it. Virginian? Is it
Vir-
Virginian? Like,
Virginia.
but somebody from Virginia, are you a Virginian person? Are you what
I don't
makes
know.
that's a good question. So regard okay, I'm still ignorant to the culture of Virginia. You said you're a Virginia person to your core. What's some
Yeah.
of the like staples that makes somebody from Virginia a person from Virginia? Like I know nothing about
Oh my
Virginian
gosh.
culture.
Yeah, I mean it's pure Southern. So you
Okay.
are, Southern food. So your traditional Southern food, right? Your fish, your chicken, your biscuits,
Mhm.
your baking, all of that. But you're outside of a lot of porch conversation,
Mm,
um, a lot of community. So your neighbor is your neighbor. And so you take care of each other. Everyone knows everyone, even if you're in a bigger area. My sister lives in Charleston, South Carolina, and you still have that community feel in such a large city. Um, so and it's just love, it's there's so much love and hospitality. Virginia is hospitality at its core. So you need food. I may not know you, but I will make you a plate.
mm, love it. And then where do we find you now? Like, where do you live now? Where's home base? Where do you work and live out of?
So I'm in Ohio. I'm right outside of Columbus, about 45 minutes north. So I'm in the countryside of Ohio. Very quiet town, pretty peaceful. I have a pond that is right outside of my window. So I mean, it's really country. I was born and raised here, um, and have worked in Ohio-based companies primarily, but I have traveled all over the world. So, and right now I'm a writer and I work out of my home, also doing consulting and executive coaching.
Yep. And so in kind of your bio, as I was getting to know you virtually before today,
A very
um,
long,
it's
yeah.
it's so good. There's a really curious intersection of spirituality, talking about fear and faith, and then there's this like you're a corporate powerhouse, one of the most influential women in corporate America, it's been said.
It
Um,
has been said.
I love that. Um, so lots of like a really interesting weave of a whole bunch of stuff, not just in the spiritual spaces, not just in inspiration, not just in corporate America, a really cool tapestry. Let us into the story a little bit. How did you get to become kind of this person? I mean, I know that's a lot, but like, what's the couple minute story here of how you became who Bethany is?
I stumbled into and through a lot of these things. So my degrees are in sociology and criminology, and I stumbled into business. I was going to either be a lawyer or professor of sociology, and so I kind of stumbled into business. And in the business world, I have an odd brain. So my brain just kind of pieces things together. I'm also very curious, so that worked for me in human resources, and I excelled there. But I stumbled into being the head of HR. Even when I was in human resources, I didn't have the goal of being the head of HR. It seemed like it was too much stress,
Mhm.
a lot of hypocrisy, and I don't really like pressure cookers. Not really my vibe. And I really have a problem with people outsourcing their accountability, which is what happens with leaders who have a lot of power and money. Not all leaders, but a
Mhm.
substantial amount of leaders. So that wasn't really my drive, but I stumbled there, and the door was open, and I am also quite courageous. So I
Mhm.
was like, okay.
Yeah.
Mind you, I wasn't stumbling without some courage and grit. So I walked through boldly. There
Yes.
was definitely trepidation there, but I was walking through boldly. And then I left this wonderful career where I could have, and I'm not saying this in an egotistical way. I was a young executive, and because I was so young, there were a lot of eyes on me outside of the spaces that I worked in. So I could have gone on and done something else. And I said, I can't. I don't want this. I don't like what it's doing to me. And it's mentally, spiritually, and physically killing me. And so I'm going to go and do something different, and which is what I'm doing now.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so a lot of my resistance to the online world or taking certain gigs is because of what I came out of. I'm
Yep.
like, this is feeling a little like the boardrooms I left. I'm good.
Mm-hmm.
Fine.
The first thing I notice about that is you mentioning how you kind of you were on one trajectory
Yep.
and it shifted. And
Yes.
then you're in another place and you expanded, you became more of your true self, and then you that wasn't your place either, and then you shifted.
Yeah.
I feel like for so many people, especially young people that I work with over the course of their life, choose your path, take the courses, work toward it. Like there's such a linear mindset, I think. Either kids are filled with wanderlust and they don't really have a plan and they don't do nothing, or
Yep.
they're so focused and they can't change. If they change, they fail. There's a pliability to you becoming you. What would you
Yeah.
say to a young person who says, "Man, I'm getting this degree, but I hate it. I'm in this job and I don't know if I can switch. I don't want to take the risk and quit my job. I don't want to, jump off the cliff and see who's going to catch me."
Yeah.
Um, it's worked for you to be pliable, to change and to shift.
Yeah.
What could you speak into that for maybe some young people or maybe even old people that are just stuck and maybe know there's something else for them out there?
Yeah. I'll say something that is countercultural, cultural as I tend to do.
Mhm, mhm,
So your power is not staying the course. Your power is in the pivot.
mhm,
And I say it that way because your ability to assess what is real versus what is the illusion or what you hope and what is your ego, that's where your strength lies. So I could have stayed the course, and I likely would not have been as successful because I would have been really responding to what everyone else was telling me to do versus what I knew to be true. And so when we lock in and say this is what it is and this is what it has to be, we kind of blind our vision a little bit. We just there's nothing going on over here. We're just right here. And we end up crashing because we don't see the car barreling towards us to the left or to the right.
mhm,
And that's a horrible way to live.
mhm. So how does someone begin to discern or make those decisions? Like if the world around you is saying, Listen, you're really good at this. This is what you're supposed to do. This is really wise. Like, don't quit your job or don't get that degree, Tyler." How does
Yeah.
one begin to discern maybe that inner voice versus like what conventional wisdom might say? If the power is in the pivot, how
Yeah.
does one wisely make a pivot? I mean, I was told much when I was young that my heart is deceitful. Don't listen to that. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's not very wise in there. Um, so how does one learn to listen to their soul or make that pivot even when the world says, more money, more work, hustle, grind, your joy doesn't matter? Like, how did you learn to listen and how would you advise other people to do that?
Well, most people don't know what they're talking about. So it's start there. And I say that tongue in cheek because a lot of people are giving you advice based off of opinion, not fact. And rarely people are giving you advice based off of experiences that they have experienced firsthand. It's something they've heard about second and third hand. So know that my advice is coming from that spot. Uh, the first place I tell people, young people, clients, is you have to know who you are before people tell you. Because if you don't have a good handle on what your strengths are, what your gaps are, what your passions are, even a general understanding from a faith lens of who God says you are, and not in those like fluffy kind of ways, but truly in that relationship piece. Every deposit that comes along will sound innovative and will sound really, really great. And then it'll be like, okay, well, this person is successful, so they know who I am.
Mhm.
Oh, well, this person has gone before me, so that path worked for them, but it's going to work so it must work for me. When in all actuality, you guys have two different strengths.
Mhm.
Um, they have a different community than what you have. They know how to leverage a community in a way that maybe you don't or you do.
Mhm.
And so the basic answer and starting point out the blocks is you have to know who you are before people tell you. And you have to know what you're going to be willing to say no to and what you're willing to say yes to.
Mhm.
Those kind of three things are key to being able to change course because you'll just keep zigging and zagging when things get hard.
Mhm.
You'll zag when things are going really great, but then you'll have that complete letdown
Mhm.
the first time you encounter discomfort. You'll be like, oh my gosh, I need to change now because this isn't working anymore. And a lot of times I have conversations with people where this was working for 60 days and now it's not.
Mhm.
What do I need to do?
Mhm. Mhm. So to distill down that even more,
Mhm.
um, how does one figure that out for themselves? So, okay, most people don't know what they're talking about. People are
Yeah.
speaking into our experience from a perspective that they don't understand. They don't know what it's like to be Tyler. They don't know what it's like to be Bethany. And yet, we can't necessarily do this alone.
No, we can't.
Um, so how do we actually figure out what the answers to those questions are? How
Yeah.
do I know what my yeses are? How do I know what my nos are? What does that process look like? If it's like, yeah, that makes sense, Bethany. Like, yeah,
Like,
I,
this
I
is
would
great.
I would love to know that about me, but I don't know how to know that. People have told me how to believe, what music to listen to, what like how does one actually figure out the answers to those questions in their own story?
Well, this is where community matters. And so when I say that most people don't know what they're talking about, I'm talking about the external,
Yes.
right? Because we take all these inputs, social media, whatever. Um, a part of that is your community. And when I say community, I'm talking about when you are in crisis, who are those people who you call? And I like to label 4 or 5 people your personal board of directors.
Mhm.
And these are the people who you entrust to see you and see the skills and what you bring to the table, even maybe before you see them. Um, that doesn't need to be 15, 20 people. It could just be 2 people. And those people can kind of help guide you down this path and this conversation of refining and defining that for yourself.
Mhm.
But you definitely need community to do that. You can't do it by yourself because you will also need people to remind you when the going gets tough of who you are and who you have said you want to be.
Mhm.
And self-talk, like in your head, can get really negative and really dark. And we need people to kind of breathe life into us and people who know us, not, some random person saying, you are amazing. It's like,
Mhm.
yeah, great, but you're actually not doing life with me. So
Mhm.
like, I
Yes.
appreciate it, but
Yeah. Um, would you be willing to let us into what that evolution has looked like for you? Um, like how have you like what were some of the narratives maybe that you changed about yourself in your evolution of life? How have you evolved and become more of you as you've made these shifts, as you've become more honest, as you've become freely and fully you? How has
yeah.
that evolved from like say 25 years ago to now, or even 5 years ago till now, just to maybe give some people some substance or some actual story
Yeah, put the
to
meat on the bone.
what's a story of how that evolution has happened in your life.
So one of the things I would say, which is not known about me, but I will share with your community and with you, is I have struggled with self-doubt a lot. And it is something that comes up even now pretty regularly. So this evolution of being able to walk into rooms and not feel small, not feel undeserving, not feel as though I have value has been a journey. So at the start of my career, because I was the only person who looked like me, and so for those people who can't see me, I am an African American woman with big curly hair. I look 6 foot, but I'm actually only 5'1". And so I would be walking into rooms, and immediately the attention would be on me, not because of the mental value that I was bringing, but because I just looked different. And that made me deeply insecure. Um, and so trying to move past that of, I don't want to add to my insecurity, so I will just stay silent, right? I don't want to weigh my mind down. So I'll just smile and nod and just be agreeable, even though there are things that I wanted to speak up about, or things I didn't agree with, especially with my role in human resources. I could not get over my self-doubt. And so it really took me getting a mentor who could speak into that self doubt without me even realizing it. It's not like somebody sat down with me and said, "Listen, you struggle with self doubt, and this is how I'm going to help you." What she did was she helped me sift through all of the stuff and amplify the things that made me great at what I was doing. And then I was able to speak internally to that self doubt and make that voice just a little quieter, a little quieter, a little quieter. And so now, when those moments come up, anytime I have to speak on a stage, anytime, I have complete anxiety and I want to get sick. Um, but I go through this kind of exercise of, reminding myself of who I am, the value that I bring. And if I can just reach one person, then that's all that matters. So that's a little bit of what that looks
Yeah,
like.
yeah. Thank you for sharing. And just for whatever it's worth, vulnerability is so sacred. And so to
Yeah.
share that with a stranger, we've only known each other for like 15 minutes. Thank you for sharing that. Um, in the last two answers you've given, you've mentioned like the internal voice, this internal dialogue. I
Yeah.
am a big fan of mantras. I am muttering to myself all the time when I'm sleeping, when I'm waking up. Tell me a little bit about what that looks like. Are we crazy for talking to ourselves and talking inside all the time? Like, yeah, talk a little bit about that internal dialogue, that internal voice that clearly matters to you. Yeah, what does that look like for you?
So
And yeah.
I talk to myself all the time. um, in part because that's just how I think through thoughts. But I will feel myself being mentally and emotionally weighed down, just by things that I've had I had a very traumatic first marriage. So, I have healed from that. And the reason I'm putting that in quotations is because sometimes when we use the language healed, um, people will at times have the impression that, oh, there's a bow on that. Now it's on the shelf and it never comes back up. But it does.
Yes.
And so even though I'm in a very happy marriage now, and so I'll have moments where, old things come back. And so I will have to talk to myself and say that I am capable and I'm able. And I'll have to say it out loud so I can hear myself. And so I'll say and do things like that when I feel myself going a little to the left or to the right. But I do talk audibly at times just to combat the thoughts and kind of counter that weight that I'm carrying mentally. Hopefully that answers your
Yeah,
question.
I love that. And I've been reading a lot lately about neuroplasticity and just the
Oh,
way in which like saying the same thing over and over actually changes the makeup of our brain matter.
oh, I didn't
And
know that.
and that like mantras and things like and that's even why things like saying the rosary or various Buddhist chant and things like it just the chemicals that really do over just rhythmic repetition completely it can alter our brain chemistry. And it's super fascinating in that, yeah.
Wow.
It's super impactful and really, really important. And can really,
Okay.
like, that's why our inner dialogue does matter so much, because it does get connected with even chemicals that get released in our brain. And um,
Yeah.
yeah, you know, you mentioned getting divorced, and you mentioned it being painful, as it should be, as divorce is often, um, and that little bit of evolution. Would you be willing to just speak into what your journey has been like there? Maybe especially, like as you mentioned, your faith after divorce, your spirituality, that healing journey. Again, like for whatever it's worth, I feel. Insecure a little bit around you, like a powerful corporate woman, like you were
Oh,
recommended by, and yet we all have these stories. We all have these things that we've gone through, these griefs, these losses, what some might call a failure, which isn't fair, probably. You can
right.
define however this was for you, but in spiritual circles, especially,
Yeah.
like the way things like divorce get talked about. What has that journey been like for you, and how have you healed? Yeah, just let us into some of that as you do talk about from time to time.
Yeah, it was so hard.
Hmm. Hmm.
It was uh probably one of the hardest things I've ever gone through in my life because I could not wrap my mind around, and I'm just going to be honest, I could not wrap my mind around why God would let this happen. And so I had this deep resentment and anger um, towards my situation, and I didn't have anywhere to put it. So I blamed God for that in a time where um, I really needed deep prayer and deep comfort because I had been dropped by the person who I was supposed to spend the rest of my life with. And I equated that also to God dropping me. And so the mental turmoil of that, while also trying to maintain this illusion of corporate greatness, was so taxing. But God is patient and kind and always near. And so I just had a breaking point, which I have shared before, where I just started crying and found myself opening my Bible, and which I had not done in a while, opening my Bible and reading the book of Psalms and Proverbs in no particular order out loud and inserting myself into those verses, and that kind of started on this healing journey. And then I went to therapy, as one should do. I this is I'm not telling everyone. I think people should go to I think people should
Absolutely.
go to therapy. I think there are certain traumas that we experience behind closed doors that we should have therapy for.
Yes.
So then I went to therapy. So that kind of relationship journey between me and God, and no other person dictating that relationship, right? Nobody telling me what that needed to look like and how that was done. So that was just me and God. It was no devote. I'm not dogging devotionals. It wasn't like a devotional thing. It was just me and God talking, crying, me doing all of those things, and then therapy and kind of that 3 year journey. Was It took me about 3 years to kind of come out of that kind of mental dark space, and then feeling like I could run again. Um, so that's kind of what it looked like for me. People their eyes tend to go up when I say that I was angry and upset with God, but we need to recognize that sometimes people don't have anywhere to put their stuff, and we can put that there.
Yes.
And that's perfectly fine.
Yes, it
I
is.
don't know what
Yeah.
your thoughts are on that, but
No, no, I think that is perfectly uh wise, and it belongs,
yeah.
to neglect the full spectrum of our humanity in the name of spirituality will do nothing but damage.
Yep.
And yeah, I think it all belongs. I think if anything, I get in trouble in my teachings because I tend to try to make Jesus more human than I
I love
do
that.
to maybe make
I love
him
that.
more divine.
Yeah.
Although I'm one to find divinity in most things,
Yeah.
if not all things. But I think the ways in which Jesus also expressed, like I love how Jesus, he was like, God, this plan sucks. Can we do a different one? Like, can you take this? Can we do a different one? Like, I think this is a bad idea, dude.
Yeah.
Like,
Tap me in here. Tap me
this
in.
sucks. Like, can you do a better one? Like, and he still surrendered, he still let go, but he
Yeah.
made known
Yeah.
like, can you take this cup? Like, can we do a different one? I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like there's that just radical honesty. Anyway, yeah. Um,
Which is beautiful.
Yes, it belongs. And so to me, I would say to grieve, to question the plan, I would suggest is Christ-like, actually.
Yeah.
It's actually to follow in the footsteps of Christ,
Yeah.
to question, to have big emotions, to cry, to feel betrayed, to
Yeah.
be annoyed with your friends. All is a mimicking of the one that I follow. If I was to read between the lines, Bethany, not
Oh, you're
Bethany,
fine. Yeah. Yeah.
Bethany, um, your spirituality has evolved a little bit.
Hmm.
You mentioned I had to figure out between me and God.
Yeah. Yeah.
No
Yeah.
devotionals, no other people telling me what it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
There came a moment, as often does in grief and suffering and loss, that it had to be distilled. We
Yeah.
had to take away some of these things. Let us into that in your story a little bit,
Of
and maybe
course.
give a little bit of context for people whose spirituality is changing.
Yeah.
I, for what it's worth, I live in like evangelical Mecca, for example. And you mentioned even, being an African American woman in these like corporate environments,
Yeah.
and like the black experience, for example, in evangelical white America is not easy. And so as a
Mhm.
spiritual director, walking with a lot of folks, through that process, connecting back to maybe the spirituality of their grandparents or from other people, other places where they grew up, or reconnecting to the culture of their family or the spirituality. The point being,
Yeah.
spiritual evolution matters, and it's so important, especially on the other sides of suffering.
Yes.
How has that evolved for you? What does that look like? Not just post divorce, but just as you've
In general.
evolved as a human. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, so my father became a pastor when I was 5,
Okay.
which is, interesting because he's a black man from the South
Hmm.
who came to Ohio. But he was in the corporate world and then he was called to ministry. And so I really was not a fan, not a fan of, being a pastor's kid and the religious lens that comes with, being in that fabric. Um, so God and I we were kind of like, I was like, this isn't really my vibe.
Hmm.
Because I saw very hurt people. I was in close proximity to hurt people, but I was also in proximity to healthy people. So it was very interesting. Um, and then I went to college and I've traveled all over the world. I spent summer in China. I did all the things. Um, and just trying to figure out without a prescription, and which I credit my parents for this because they were always really big on you have to have your own relationship with God, with Christ. Like you can't be leaning on us. Like you got to figure this out. Um, and so really just trying to figure out what's my rhythm and how are God and I running together. And a lot of that looked like a lot of at some tug and pull and having to deal with other people's judgments. So you mentioned like the classic religious things, right? Like what women wear, what music you're listening to. again, lucky for me, I had parents who were like, well, you're the decider of your life, not public opinion.
Mhm.
And actually, Christ doesn't operate that way, which people don't like to hear because that means they don't have control,
Mhm. Mhm.
right? Um, and so that kind of state of me figuring out how me and God are running this race called life together without anyone else has now shifted into my complete frustration with, which I think is a Christly frustration, with the monetization of hope,
Mhm. 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 Mhm.
right? So the monetization of access um, to faith, to kind of, and I say bare bones faith, which is like the practical pieces, not with all this extra stuff that we, as you say, you're in the Mecca, right? So you
Mhm.
know what I'm talking about. Um, so it has now shifted into I don't have any energy
Mhm.
anymore. Where versus in my 20s, I would just be, like, you're not going to tell me what to do.
Mhm.
Keep it pushing. Now I have no patience to entertain what is going on right now.
Mhm.
And so when people ask me a question, I answer it very directly and very sharply,
Mhm.
um, but also very humbly.
Mhm.
But so that's kind of what that looks like. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I mean, for what it's worth, humility, I believe, is just telling the truth.
Exactly.
So it is very humble to tell the truth sharply and directly.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So what personally for you changed? Like I heard, for example, there was a moment where you sort of projected this abandonment from your first marriage onto God.
Yeah.
What were some of the narratives about God? What were some of the beliefs that changed for you as you have become more in tune with your direct relationship with God? Say, this is the way young Bethany engaged with the divine. And then through these deeper evolutions, now I engage with God this way. Or I believe these things as you've changed and evolved or deepened your spirituality.
I would say before I had this internal belief, one that God was going to leave or tire,
Mhm.
that Christ was going to leave or tire. Um, and I could not distinguish between him and the people around me who had left,
Mhm.
dropped me, grew weary or impatient because I wasn't available. Um, my own internal shortcomings. I was like, well, if I'm this way, I wonder what God thinks. Simultaneously, not reading my Bible.
Sure.
Like at the same time, I'm like, well, not really. At that time, I'm like, well, I wonder what he thinks, but I'm not searching to figure out what he thinks. I'm just taking the inputs from other people. I'm like, oh, okay, well,
Mhm.
that's what he thinks about that. And so then the change happened because I am a curious person because I'm like, I kind of want to figure this out on my own without being told. And that was probably around the mid 20s. One of the issues I ran into was I was in a marriage that he would use biblical teachings to kind of keep me in line,
Mhm.
which people find surprising because they're like, what are you?
Mhm.
You're like,
Yeah.
you've done all these things, you're on the rise. What do you mean keep you in line? Um, and there was this part of me that really wanted the marriage to work. Um, of course, I had that voice in the back of my head, God hates divorce.
Mhm.
I have to say, because I did say my father's a pastor, as soon as I called and told him I was getting a divorce, he said, I support you 110. So that was that. None of that was my parents. They are like 10 toes down. They're very different kind of
Mhm.
they're different.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
than the majority of kind of what we would see.
Sure.
But there was that voice in my mind of like, okay, God
Mhm.
hates the voice. So, interpreting scripture incorrectly
Mhm.
will keep us hostage.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so I was just kind of bound and I wasn't talking to anyone because of pride. And so then that kind of changed. I'm like, I'm out. Time out. I need to figure this out for myself. Like this is not working for me. And so
Mm,
that's kind of
yes.
what happened. It
Yeah.
just wasn't working for me. And I was
Mm,
not fully blooming or living to the potential of who I was made to be. We like to use that Bible verse around how God has knew us while we were in the womb, like before we were in the womb, and yet we counter who we are outside of that.
mhm, mm,
Right? We remove him from the equation in adulthood. No, this is who he made you to be. You should grow and step into that, right?
yes. Oh, I wish we had more time. That's my first book that's going to be coming out is all about being rewombed by God and
Oh, I love this.
going back to the womb. And so one of the things I so admire about you, getting to know you here, is you've come back to curiosity over and over and over.
Yes.
And and I can't help but recognize, Bethany, like, the way in which Christ often said, first of all, let the children come to me. And I
Mhm.
don't think he was, at least personally, don't think he was just excluding adults. I think he so often just appreciated the childlike nature.
Yes.
And it's like that like little kids don't just friggin' like overcomplicate shit
I
so much.
know.
And
Right?
like and but to say this, in almost every single thing you've shared so far, curiosity is one of the things that brought you home.
Yes.
I need to figure this out for myself. I need to go
Yes.
inside and do this on my own. I need to do the reading. I need to do the prayer. I need to suffer, not isolated from
Yep.
community, but that I'm not going to just do what I've been told, but I've
Yep.
got to go inside. And curiosity, there are few childlike qualities like curiosity.
Yeah.
Kids are curious. We
Mhm.
actually, sad story. We had a bird fly into our window yesterday, and we had a dead bird in our front lawn. And my 6-year-old son and my 2-year-old daughter were just curious as could be. And we're holding this bird, and we're sad, and we're learning, and we're looking. And at first, I was like, "Oh, I don't want them to see it." And I was like, "Okay, no, Tyler, things die. Things are sad. Let's learn." But they
Yeah.
were so, and I expected them to freak out, and they were so curious.
Yeah.
Oh, tell me about this. And then my son was like, "Well, Dad, maybe an eagle will fly into our window tomorrow, and then we can see that." And he was. But my point is this: their curiosity turned into compassion. Oh,
Yes.
this thing is alive.
Yeah.
It was. It was real. It maybe had a family or whatever, and curiosity really brought them to love. And I think that's always the case in our
Yes.
own story and with when we really learn. Maybe it's somebody
Yes.
who's politically different. Maybe it's going through my own grief.
Yeah.
God, did you abandon me too? Let's get curious.
Yeah.
Man, why do I hate that person? Let's get curious. Why do I hate myself? Let's get curious. It's this childlikeness that brings us back to the womb because we're like kids so close to the womb when
Yeah.
we're curious.
I love that.
I think curiosity, for what it's worth, almost always leads to compassion, which I'll tell you this is really cool. The word compassion, Bethany, has the same root structure as the word for womb, rechum and rechemim. So when we read in the scripture, God had compassion on someone, it can be read as God is bringing them back into the womb.
Oh, wow.
A rabbi once told me you can read it as whenever you read compassion, you can read it as rewombing. God is rewombing the
Wow.
people.
I never knew that.
Isn't that cool?
That is very cool.
Hmm. All that to
Oh,
say,
wow.
your curiosity, it seems, has always brought you back to safety and love and
Yes.
warmth and
Yes.
your truest self, the person you were created to be in the womb.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
All of that.
Mm,
And I would add, wow, now you have my brain. Like,
mhm,
I'm like, I'm gonna go back and read that
mhm, mhm,
or study that. And I would add, it also helped me. We were talking about healing earlier, but
mhm,
also forward vision, see God's hand in my story. in ways I couldn't see in
Mhm.
that present moment.
Yes.
Because when I look back, I'm like,
Mhm.
oh, he didn't leave nor did he forsake.
Yes.
So it wasn't someone telling me, it wasn't me reading the verse, it was being able to apply
Mhm.
that
Mhm.
to all the chaos that was happening
Mhm. Mhm.
on the other side of that. That's really good.
Mhm.
That's really good.
Yeah. Mhm. Yes.
Which is powerful when we are able to see God's hand in our story and not being told God sees you, God is with you,
Mhm.
which is all true, but can also be surface level
Mhm.
if we can't apply it.
Yes. Yeah. To know these truths, at some point they must be a lived experience.
Yeah,
Father Richard Rohr, he always says, you can't think yourself into a new way of living. You have to live yourself into a new way of thinking. We have to
yeah.
live it, we have to experience, which again, here I'm going on my little thing,
Oh
but
no, I like
like
Richard Rohr. Yeah,
like
yeah,
like the womb is a lived experience. And in my teaching, I would say that the womb is our first knowing of belovedness. That it
yeah,
was in the womb we first knew it, which was not an intellectual knowing.
yeah,
It was an experience, right? When it says Adam knew Eve, it means they had sex.
yeah,
It wasn't Adam read a book about his wife and knew so much about her. That doesn't mean much.
yeah,
To reflect on your life, to be curious about it, is to
yeah.
say, these are the places I experienced God's presence.
Yes,
To go back, that's like the Jesuits, they often teach you actually only will know God by examination almost. Like that's the way you get to know God is by examining the
yeah,
past,
yeah.
and that's the only way you'll get to know God in the present. And oh, that is so rich. I really appreciate you sharing that.
That's good. No, I appreciate what you're
Yeah.
sharing. That because it again, it helps paint the tapestry is never complete,
Yes.
right? So you have this is why it's important to talk to people because you've just added another layer
Mm.
to the fabric of my life
Yeah. Mm.
uh, through conversation. So it's, I'm just like, wow, it's just another paradigm to,
Mm.
just to think about God in that way and just
Yeah.
how he has shown up consistently,
Mm.
you
Hmm.
know, knowing all those years ago when I was going through all of that, that now in
Yeah.
2025, I'd be having this conversation with you
Yes.
about,
Hmm.
this
Hmm.
kind of beauty. So that's really good.
Yeah. Thank you. It would probably be a crime if we didn't talk about the corporate world just a little bit, since
It's
you
fine.
are
I don't know if it'd be a crime, but it's
um,
fine. We can.
I would be curious though, in a world that seems very sterile, very up and to the right, these are the outfits you wear, this is how you talk, this is how you look. And
Yeah.
here we are talking about an embodied, very personalized spirituality, one that
Yes.
comes from the inside.
Yeah.
One that, like, so I guess my question is, how does spirituality, how does someone who has a rich spiritual life, or how do you, as a deeply wise, like you mentioned the scope of your wisdom is ditch to ditch, like it's very
Yeah.
wide. You're not a unilateral person,
Right.
as is the case with all of humanity. And
Exactly.
then you go and live and work in this very sterile environment. How does that intersect? How does one thrive spiritually in, say, a corporate environment? Um, yeah, how do those things intertwine for you? And how would you guide, say, someone who isn't as entrepreneurial or isn't a freely expressive artist? Um, how do they thrive in environments like that? And where does the spiritual and the self-expression, the personal uniqueness collide with say that corporate life?
Hmm. Well, let me see if I can answer that. And if I don't, please tell me and I'll try again. One of the things that helped me is I did not try to make my right righteous. And so that was I have more of a seek to understand type of personality. So because when you're in a corporate world, you're also getting to know people and kind of their personhood. And if you, I'm going to say that word again, that curiosity lens of just trying to get to know people for who they are and not trying to impose on them is extremely helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I would highly recommend it.
Mm-hmm.
Just period. Um, but there are also parts of myself that I had to put on the back burner. And so the corporate space is not a place at the time when I was there, is not a space for you to talk about religion, politics, and things like that. And so I just kind of know that I am a believer. I don't have a tagline. It's not on my social medias. It's not on my website. But when you meet me, you meet Christ, which means you're meeting love, you're meeting humility,
Mm-hmm.
you're meeting hospitality. That's kind of who I am. It's the fabric of who I am. So I don't really need to make a declaration. Now, somebody's not going to like when I say that, but it is what it is. So I'm only charged with sharing the good news.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's, you know,
Yeah.
and so I do that in the areas of my strength. So that's kind of how I balance that in the corporate world. Um, was leading with empathy,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's so good.
right? And so people struggle to conform. People want to conform, and then they're like, "But I feel like I have to do." No, you don't.
Mm-hmm.
You actually you don't. You don't have to make your right, your version of right into this righteousness that actually doesn't apply to this person's life. You can just, you know, do your job.
Yes.
Is
Yes.
that kind of where you were going
I
or
yeah, I mean I was asking.
I know, I
I
just wanted to make sure
yeah.
what I heard,
Yeah. I
is
mean if I heard anything it was the pressure's off. Like just
pressure is off.
like you don't have to add to what you're like you can just show up to work and just work. And
Yeah.
if you do that well, that's okay.
Yeah.
That you don't have to be much more than a worker if that's what you are, and that
Yeah.
that's not lazy or that's not out of pocket.
It doesn't have
It,
to be a mission field.
yeah, 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 yes.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
but I mean, it's hard, and
Mm-hmm.
especially the higher. So now I'll be even more honest. So because I talk about it in my book,
Mm-hmm.
it got really hard though because I started, I was around people with a lot of money, a lot of access, and that in and of itself brings with it a lot of compromise.
Mm-hmm.
And so then you have this internal pressure, and people don't understand why you're not compromising or why you're not agreeable. And so that people have an example of what I'm talking about. So I'm not talking broadly. I mean, I'm talking about people having affairs on business trips.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And you were with their spouse at a company dinner, 2 weeks, things like that, where you're kind of like, oh, this is
Yep.
happening. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Okay. So that kind of world, and the pressure that comes with conforming, because if you're not with us,
Mm-hmm.
you are absolutely against us. And
Mm-hmm.
you can't be in the meeting where we're talking about all the things,
Mm-hmm.
which then you're excluded, and that's a problem. So, I do want to acknowledge the tightrope that, people walk
Yeah.
once they get into those leadership positions.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a lot. Um, you're a high capacity person, and I'll start wrapping this up. I know you got a bike ride to get to. I don't want to. I'm just. I got so
No,
many other
you're
things.
fine. You're fine.
I
You do
love.
whatever.
This is my favorite part of my job. I love this so much. Um, you're a high capacity person. You work with a lot of high capacity people. I want to be like you. So many people admire you, I'm sure. You and again, I've only known you for about an hour now, but you seem so centered. You have joy, and I know we all have our things, but there's a lightness to you. There is a joy, there is a spark, and you're writing books, you're consulting, you're married, all the things. Working with high capacity people, being a high capacity person, how does somebody in this culture that says grind, put in the hours, work, the epidemic of overwork and
Yeah.
burnout and things, could you just give us a little bit of wisdom and your perspective, maybe both like high level and practically, how does one do all the cool things, achieve their dreams, work hard, climb the ladder if that's their dream,
Yeah.
and also maintain their purity of soul, their sanity, their spark of joy to not let it dim on the big grind.
Um, well, the first thing I would say is never forget that you are the decider of your life, period.
Mhm,
Nobody else. And that may seem like a simple answer, but in practice, it's very, very hard. And even the people who I consult with and work with have a hard time because they want to conform, bend, and twist to appease because they're concerned about, money, losing a client, how perception, all the things. But you cannot forget that you are the one deciding when it comes to your life, your business, who you are in partnership with, and just your life. And that's really, really big. And if you lose that, the wheels will likely
mhm,
fall off. The other point I would say that people should not forget is that compromise is never free.
mhm,
It costs something. Now, that doesn't mean it's a negative cost, but whenever you chip away at your character, and well, let me back up because that is a negative cost. Um, so your compromise isn't free. But sometimes we compromise for good reasons, right? So sometimes you're making an adjustment with your spouse or something like those things are, but then there are the compromises that chip at your character, um, that chip away at that line
mhm,
that I said I would never do,
mhm,
and now you're doing it, whatever it is.
mhm,
That is going to cost you something. And it may not cost you something today, but it will absolutely cost you something 6 months, 1 year,
mhm,
5 years from now. So you need to weigh that before you make those decisions. Because what will happen is you'll be stuck on this cliff of what if and what happened.
mhm.
And it'll be harder to move out of that loop.
Yeah. You are a writer, also an author.
I am.
Tell us about that. As we start to wrap up here, tell us a little bit about your book and your writing and the message you're putting out into the world right now.
So most of my right, so I have a book that came out almost a year ago, Face Forward,
Mhm,
um, and that is a book for anyone who has had the wind knocked out of their sail, and they need to get back up. And so um, that's about resilience and grit and all of those things. Most of my writing online and on my Substack is more of a memoirist type, where I take real stories from my life over these last 25 years and I write them out, but then I give messages of hope from that
mhm,
and what I learned
mhm,
and looking back. And so that's what I do on Substack, what I do on social media also. I'm kind of, I'm really big on giving people fuel to move forward
mhm,
at their pace.
mhm, mhm,
So if you need to stay in a place for
mhm,
6 months to a year, I'm not judging.
mhm,
And so my writing is not this kind of, a lot of my stories that I tell don't have a happy ending because life doesn't have a pretty bow on it,
mhm,
right? It's an evolution
mhm,
of stories and growth, and then you look back and you say, "Look how far I've come."
mhm,
And so, if people are looking for, here's a story and here is, all the hope and all the how it, I'm probably not their
mhm,
jive, but I'm also speaking to the ache
mhm,
of what people are going through, and I don't shy away from that. I write about the things that people are thinking about before they go to sleep,
mhm.
and just letting them know, hey, you're not by yourself and it's going to be okay.
Yeah, so good. Um, so as we wrap up, you have this message to give to the world. If you could, I know this is an unfair question, but What would that core message be, Bethany? Like that core message, if you were to just have that seed that you would plant for humanity, what would that core message be?
Oh, wow. I don't. Wow, that's a big one.
I know
What
it's
would the
not
core?
fair.
I mean, I'm a big, you're not behind,
Hmm.
you're not weak. Um,
Hmm.
you can do the hard thing at your pace. Stop trying to
Hmm.
do it at everyone else's pace. And there is joy on both sides of healing.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
Because sometimes it's like, oh, there's joy on the other
Hmm.
side of healing. You can have joy in the ache too,
Yes. Hmm.
right? The joy may not outshine the ache, which shouldn't be the goal, but you
Hmm.
can have flashes of joy on both sides of healing.
Yeah.
Um,
I saw a quote on Instagram this morning that was like, micro joys are how we battle macro despair,
yes.
and just it might not
Yes.
outshine it like you said, but we can still
No, but
find these.
that's exactly what I'm talking about. Because
Yeah.
sometimes it can feel like
Hmm.
the whole world is against you
Hmm.
and there is no hope, there is no joy, and you're working through and you're working through and you're doing the therapy and it's like, where is the joy? And it's in the present.
Yes.
You don't have to look at, well, once I cross this hurdle, then I'll
Hmm.
be able to taste it. No, you can taste it now. It may be small. It may just be your cup of coffee,
Hmm.
because I don't know what people are going through,
Hmm.
and that's real. But it may be that cup of coffee in the
Yes.
morning, and then,
Yes.
but yeah, I love that. That's
Hmm.
good. I like that
Hmm.
quote
Hmm.
because it's so true.
Yes. Yes. Hmm. Where, Bethany, can people find you? Where can they consume your work? Where are you out there in the cosmos?
I am on Substack. What's the so what?
What is
And
that?
so that's my Substack is called What's the
Oh,
So What?
got it.
Because
Okay, got it. I
yeah,
thought that was a
yeah.
new app or something, and I was like,
You're like, tell me.
oh, I've
No,
got to
no,
go on
no.
another one. Ah, jeez.
No, no, no. That's what my handle on Substack is, what's the so what? Because I tell stories and then, sometimes we're like, well, what's the so what? Like, what's the point? Why are you writing this? Why are you
Mm,
telling me this? Like,
so good.
right? Like, what's the so what? Um, so that's that I'm writing my stories on what's the so what, and then
Mhm,
Instagram, Bethny Ricks, Bethny Ricks is there, and then if you want to book me for speaking and all that is
mhm.
via the website. But
Great,
that's where I'm always popping up somewhere in some city at some coffee shop. So
great. And
you'll know me by my hair.
I love it. And I'll link all that down below. For those of you who have listened here to the end, the first person to DM me the word curiosity to my Instagram, which is the Tyler, ThuhTyler. I will mail you a copy of Bethany's book. So if you DM me curiosity, I will mail you her book. So if you're digging it, get on Instagram and DM me right away so you can get that hookup. Bethany, thank you so much.
Oh,
I
thank you so much for
am just
having me.
over the moon excited and can't wait for my people to hear this. And I already have a whole list of other questions I didn't get to. So someday we'll do it again. And you, of course, are always welcome here in Colorado Springs. And even though I don't own it anymore, I can still get you some free coffee at Loyal when you're here. I negotiated 50% off for the rest of my life
Oh, that's
at
awesome.
Loyal, even though I sold it, which is the best thing I ever did. So you're always welcome. I can't wait to connect soon. Bethany, thanks for being on the Tyler Hill podcast.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. This was
All right.
great.
Peace.